All right, so last chapter ended with Henry trading Mr. Pennycuff all of his guppies and baby guppies, and he got a catfish with a heater in a special aquarium. Um, and that was the end of that chapter. Our next chapter is chapter 3, Henry and the Night Crawlers. When Henry came home from school one Friday in late September, he shook all his nickels and dimes and pennies and quarters out of a marble sack onto his bedspread. His expenses had been heavy, and he knew he didn't have much money left. The first thing he had done after getting Ribsy was to pay for a dog license and to buy him a collar. And naturally, he didn't want his dog to eat from an old chipped dish, so he had spent 79 cents for a red plastic dish with D-O-G, dog, printed on it. That took up almost all of his money. He had spent his silver dollar on the guppies and all the money he learned doing his chores taking care of them. Then he had sold the guppies for $7 and spent all $7 for the tank and the thermostat for the catfish. At breakfast this morning, his father had given him his weekly 25-cent allowance. Besides that, he had 6 cents saved from last week. He also had a nickel he had found in the park. And then there was his Canadian dime. He could try to spend that, but he hated to after keeping it for almost a year. He might want to start a coin collection sometime. With the Canadian dime, he had 46 cents, not counting 9 cents he could get for the old milk bottles he found in a vacant lot on the way home from school. All that change, though, it was not enough. Henry needed $13.95 plus 41 cents for tax. Henry needed all this money because he wanted to buy a football. A real football from a sporting goods store, not a toy football from the department store. This time he wanted a genuine cowhide football stitched with nylon thread and laced with buckskin laces. Every boy on Klickitat Street wanted a football like that. As Henry looked at his coins spread out on his bed, he heard someone calling, "Henry!" Henry went to his front door, and there on the front porch stood Scooter McCarthy. Henry was surprised because Scooter didn't often come to play with him. He was in 5th grade and bigger than Henry. Henry was even more surprised when he saw what Scooter was holding. A real cowhide football stitched with nylon thread and laced with real buckskin laces. "Hi, Scoot," said Henry. "Boy, oh boy, where'd you get that cool football?" "Oh, my grandma sent it to me for my birthday." "Your grandma?" Henry could hardly believe it. "My grandma sends me sweaters and socks." "Yeah, my grandma sends me cool presents. Come on out and throw some passes with me." Scooter pounded the football with his fist, and it made a deep thump like a drum. Henry could hardly wait to touch the leather. When the boys, followed by Ribsy, went out to the sidewalk, Scooter ran up the street a ways and threw the ball back to Henry. It hit some branches that overhung the sidewalk, but Henry caught it anyway. Whoa! The ball felt just right. It was big and solid and smelled of new leather. Henry lovingly ran his hands over the surface before he sent it sailing back to Scooter. The ball, though, hit the tree branch again. "I know what," said Scooter. "If I go on the other side of the street and we throw it back and forth across the street, we won't hit the trees." He tucked the ball under his arm as if he were running 90 yards for a touchdown and sprinted across the street. Pow! The ball sailed into Henry's hands. It made a deep, hollow sound, just the kind of sound a good football should make. Henry sent it across the street. Pow! Scooter caught it. Back and forth the ball flew until Henry's hands began to tingle from the smack of leather against them. "Hey, Henry, throw it to me once more," called Scooter. "And then let's go down to the empty lot and we can practice kicking it." Henry wished he could carry the ball, but after all, it did belong to Scooter. He gripped it firmly and drew it back over his shoulder. This time he was going to throw a perfect pass, the kind he had seen the All-Americans throw on Saturday morning football games on TV. As he started to bring his arm forward, "Ruff!" Ribsy gave a sudden bark. Henry looked around for Ribsy, but his arm kept going and the ball left his fingers. Right at that instant, a car zoom, whizzed around the corner, and Scooter yelled, "Hey, look out!" It was too late. There was nothing Henry could do. The speeding car did not slow down, and for one terrible moment he thought the ball was going to hit the driver. Instead, it sailed into the rear window, bounced against the seat, and fell inside. The car raced on down the street and screeched around a corner on two wheels. The football was gone. And let's see here. Oh, the lighting is terrible. You could see Henry and Ribsy. Across the street is Scooter. And there's the car. The football went in one window and then didn't come out the other side and has now driven away. The boys stared after the car. Henry was so surprised he stood there with his arm still in the air. When he finally remembered to bring it down, he was still speechless. My football!" exclaimed Scooter. He stopped looking down the street after the departed car and looked at Henry. "My ball's in that car," he said accusingly. "Yeah, I guess it is." Henry was uncomfortable. Maybe the guy in the car will bring it back in a little while," he said hopefully. "He'd better," said Scooter grimly. The boys sat down on the curb to wait. "Boy, I bet he was going about 80 miles an hour, said Henry. "I couldn't even see his license plate." "He ought to be arrested," said Henry, who was anxious to talk about anything but Scooter's football. "Yeah, he could have killed somebody," said Scooter. The boys waited and waited. The longer they waited, the more angry Scooter looked. "I don't think that car is going to come back," he said finally. "It's all your fault. You threw the ball." "Yes, I know," admitted Henry. "But it wasn't my fault that Ribsy barked and the old car came by just then." "Ah, you shouldn't have thrown it." Scooter scowled darkly. "I couldn't help it," Henry scowled back. "I didn't even see the car until after I threw the ball. I couldn't catch it after I'd thrown it, could I?" "Ah, I don't care. You would have heard the car coming if that dumb dog of yours hadn't made so much noise. He wasn't even barking at anything. You lost my new ball, and you're going to have to buy me a new one. If you don't, I'll... Scooter wasn't quite sure what he would do, so he didn't finish the sentence. Henry didn't know what to say. It didn't seem right that he was to blame. Still, half an hour ago, Scooter had a new football, and now it was gone, and Henry had been the last one to touch it. I have 46 cents and 3 milk bottles you could have," said Henry hopefully. He hated to see that football disappear almost as much as Scooter did. "Ah, that's not enough," said Scooter. You gotta buy me a new football before next Saturday, or I'll tell my dad, and he'll tell your dad, and then you'll really get it. Henry suspected Scooter was right. He probably would get it. Once, when he had accidentally broken another boy's roller skate, his father had given him a talking to and then made him spend his allowance to have it get fixed. Okay, he said, I'll get you a new football. I don't know how, but I guess I'll manage. And that's where we're going to stop, with Henry having lost Scooter's brand new $13.95 football. Tune in tomorrow and we'll see what Henry does to try and get Scooter a new football. All right, hope you find some time to read on your own, draw some pictures, write about them, help mom and dad, help your brothers and sisters. Just be a good kid. Miss you guys.